WGN Evening News at 5.
President Trump today marks his first 100 days in office by holding a rally in Michigan. The state's been rocked by trade tariffs with its auto manufacturing and close ties with Canada. The president will sign an executive order scaling back some auto tariffs. Still, overall consumer confidence has plunged to a 5-year low as Americans worry about the impact of a global trade war. And Democrats say the Trump administration has frozen, stalled, or otherwise disrupted $430 billion in federal money. Recent polls also find Americans are not happy with how the administration is handling immigration, one of his key campaign points.
To dive more into Trump's first 100 years, WGN political analyst Paul Lisek is joining us.
Feels
good
like
years. Right. It was only days. Not
Oh,
years.
100 days. I'm not going to say anything after that. But let's start off by saying what are there, because there's a lot to go into. But what are the positive effects of some of the things that he's done in his first 100 years?
Look,
days.
Yeah, we know what you meant. We know what you meant. So here's the thing: where you're going to give him full points is on the border control. I mean, he came in. If you were to rank the issues for him, you'd say the border and the economy, separate. But on the border, he shut that thing down like about 95%. So he's gained tremendous control. He also did something else that is pretty smart, knowing he would, or at least the people around him, knowing he would get challenged, which is we don't have a bunch of people crossing the border being sent to jails in Texas and those places. We're sending them to El Salvador. The due process issues aside for a moment, by his doing that, he now puts the onus really almost on everybody else in the country to say, good luck trying to get these people back. He's surrounded by people who I think were smart enough to basically say, here's what you got to do to continue doing what you are trying.
Yeah, immigration is one thing.
Yeah.
The economy, everything else. Can you just talk about the shock of the speed and the force of all of these changes that normally come from Congress, which is much more deliberate? Now, Congress versus the courts, what are the point of them?
Well, that one of the reasons that he is accomplishing so much is because so much of what he's doing, which steps on the toes of Congress isn't doing anything about. So because they have ceded so much power to the executive branch and specifically to him, he's getting away with things. So cutting budgets, cutting funding, all these things, that's not within his power. He argues it is because he's declared an emergency, but it's arguable whether we're in an emergency. But that aside, Congress is doing nothing to stop him. Trust me, if this were a different president and Congress stepped in to say enough, they probably win in those battles. With regard to the courts, we're seeing the courts actually exert more strength than any of the other branches right now, stepping in when they can, but all those things take time. So even there, essentially, President Trump will do something and he'll say, okay, try and stop me. The courts step in, but it's a long time before the courts can do anything.
Let's talk a little bit about the recent polls that have come out. The president probably wouldn't like a lot of them, even Fox, who supports him a lot. The poll has an approval rating below 50%. It's at 44% right now. And other polls are showing his approval ratings kind of down as well. What does this mean as his presidency continues?
Well, look, he's claiming that the poll, but you have to remember what he says for his supporters. He claims the polls are fake news. He's ordering investigations into the people conducting those polls. The polls are valid. The polls are as valid as any poll is going to be. And the bottom line is it's a message. But here's the thing. If you're President Trump, he technically doesn't have another term to be going for. So his view is, I'm going to just pursue my agenda. The people who should be worried about the poll numbers, Micah, or Congress, because we know that in the 2026 election that's coming up, it's the party out of power that tends to do well. That's the Democrats. And again, Trump isn't worried about 2028, aside from what people may say. He's not, he wouldn't be eligible for that. But Republicans in 2026 would face a headwind anyway. With these kind of poll numbers at the top of the ticket for the president, that makes it a very difficult situation for the senators and the Republicans in Congress who face re-election. They're the ones that have to be concerned.
On the campaign trail, he did sort of disavow it, but how much do you think of Project 2025 has actually worked its way into the achievements and accomplishments that he has been going for behind the scenes?
A lot. I mean, if you go back to the 900 and some pages of 2025, a lot of the people who wrote those individual chapters, they're in the government now. And it's almost a checklist. And others have done this where they've kind of created the checklist. There's just a few things left that they have to sort of be addressing to sort of take down. But the media, all the things you see happening, they're all Project 2025 elements. And again, this is something that's been planned for quite a while. They didn't step in on January 21st and say, well, what should we do? I mean, they have had the last 4 years of being out of power to get ready ready for this. And as I said, kind of in response to your first question, Micah, you got to give them credit on that, because some of the moves they've made basically make it very difficult for them to be challenged by other entities. And so they were ready for this, and they're ready for almost any step that another branch or anybody does to try and challenge them. They're ready with a response.
Paul Lisnek, we'll talk more.
We'll see you Friday night.
Yeah, Friday night.
We'll do it.
Lots of
Take
stuff.
care.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.